Hello, this is Dr. Vikas Agrawal from Dr. H.S. Gaur University, Sagar. Today's topic for the discussion is pre-trial process, investigation by police. Investigation is a pre-trial stage in the criminal justice system. It is conducted for the purpose of collection of evidences against the accused. It is an important stage because at this stage the prima facie guilt of the accused is determined and then he is put to the stage of trial. All the cognizable offences are considered to have been committed against the state. Learning outcome. By reading this module, the students will be able to analyze the police officer's power to investigate without the orders of the magistrate in case of cognizable offences, magistrate's power to order investigation, the information relating to the non-cognizable offence and the procedure thereon, police officer's power to order any person to appear before him, interrogation by the police officer, confession made to the magistrate at the stage of investigation, police remand and judicial remand, and at the last final report, investigation report and inquest report. Investigation meaning the definition of investigation is given in section 2H. It provides that investigation includes all the proceedings conducted under the code for the purpose of collection of the evidences by the police officer. However, this definition does not clear the term investigation. Chapter 12 of the Code of Criminal Procedure relates with the police officer's power to investigate, and this chapter gives a complete idea what the investigation is. Investigation initiates after the lodging of the information. It includes proceeding to the spot, make a preliminary inquiry, decide as to further conduction of the investigation, not to conduct the investigation, recording of the facts and circumstances of the crime scene, collection of evidences, making the arrest without warrant, ordering the concerned person to appear before the police officer, interrogation by the police officer, search and seizure, and at the last filing of the closure report or the filing of the charge sheet before the magistrate. In the case of H.N. Risbal versus State of Delhi, it was held by the Supreme Court that the term investigation includes first, proceeding to the spot, second, ascertainment of the facts and circumstances of the case, next, discovery and arrest of the suspected offender, next, collection of evidence relating to the commission of offence, which may consist of first, the examination of various persons including the accused, second, the search of various places and seizure of things considered necessary for the purpose of investigation, and next, formation of the opinion as to whether on the materials collected there is a case to place the accused before the magistrate for trial, and if so, filing a charge sheet under section 173 of the code. The next point for the discussion is initiation of the investigation. The investigation is initiated by giving the information under section 154 in relation to the commission of the cognizable offence. That is, after the lodging of the first information report, investigation is initiated. However, for the purpose of initiation of the investigation, lodging of the first information report is not required, as section 157 provides that the police officer may investigate a case on the basis of any information received or otherwise. Means if the police officer comes to know about the commission of a cognizable offence, then he can proceed to the spot without lodging the first information report and can conduct the investigation. There are certain circumstances in which even the magistrate has the power to order the conduction of the investigation, that is under section 156 subsection 3, under section 159 and under section 202. Even a magistrate can order to conduct the investigation. The next point for the discussion is what is FIR, that is information relating to the cognizable offence. That is covered under section 154. The information which is given in relation to the cognizable offence under section 154 is treated as first information report. These are the following ingredients of the first information report. It is an information relating to the cognizable offence. It is given to the officer in charge of the police station. It is given in writing, and if given in oral, then it shall be reduced to writing. It shall be signed by the informant. The substance of the information shall be entered into a book prescribed by the state government. A copy of the information shall also be given to the informant. However, this term first information report is not used in section 154, but the information which is given at the earliest opportunity after the commission of the offence, that is treated as the first information report. The object is to obtain the initial information about the commission of the offence, on the basis of which the police officer can start the investigation without the order of the magistrate. The next point for the discussion is police officer's power to investigate a cognizable case. Section 156 subsection 1 authorizes the police officer to conduct the investigation into a cognizable case without the prior permission of the magistrate. He is only required to report the magistrate under section 157 about the registration of a cognizable case. Now, the next point for the discussion is no interference by the court. The conduction of the investigation is a statutory power of the police officer, and court has no power to interfere at this stage. In this regard, the case of King Emperor versus Khwaja Nazir Ahmad is relevant here. In this case, it was observed by the Privy Council that the functions of the judiciary and the police are complementary, not overlapping, and the combination of individual liberty with due observance of law and order is only to be obtained by leaving each to exercise its own functions. If on the basis of the information there is a disclosure of the commission of a cognizable offence, then investigation must be conducted, and that is in the interest of justice. However, if on the basis of the information no cognizable offence is revealed, then in that regard it was observed by the Supreme Court in the case of State of West Bengal versus Swapan Kumar Guha. In this case, it was said by the Supreme Court that if no offence is disclosed by the material, then the investigation is not permitted, and the High Court, in the exercise of its powers under Article 226 or under Section 482 of the Code of Criminal Procedure, may stop and quash the investigation proceeding. A recent case decided by the Supreme Court of Babu Bhai versus State of Gujarat in the year 2011 is also relevant here. In this case, it was observed by the Supreme Court that fair investigation is also a part of Article 20 and Article 21 of the Constitution of India. The investigating agency cannot be permitted to conduct an investigation in a tainted and biased manner, where non-interference of the court would ultimately result in the failure of justice. The court must interfere. In the case of Naresh Khatri versus State of Gujarat, the question was raised before the Supreme Court that whether a High Court has the power to transfer the case for the purpose of investigation from one police station to another police station. It was said by the Supreme Court that the power of the court to interfere in an investigation is limited. The police authorities exercise a statutory power. The court has conferred the power on the statutory authorities to direct transfer of an investigation from one police station to another in the event it is found that they do not have any jurisdiction in the matter. In the case of Sharma versus Bipin, it was said by the Supreme Court that the magistrate has no power to stop the investigation. But if the police officer decides not to conduct the investigation and the report is submitted under section 157 in this regard, then the magistrate has the power to conduct the investigation if it appears to the magistrate that an investigation is required to be done in the current matter. Now, the next point for the discussion is sanction of the government. There are certain offences the cognizance of which can be taken with the prior sanction of the government, but in case of those offences also investigation can be conducted without the sanction of the government. Now, the next one is information as to non-cognizable offence. If the information which is given to the police officer reveals the commission of a non-cognizable offence, then the procedure is given in section 155. It provides that when the information relating to the non-cognizable offence is given to the officer in charge of the police station, then he shall record the information in a book kept for that purpose and refer the informant to the nearest magistrate for seeking the necessary orders. As it is provided in section 155 subsection 2 that police officer has no power to conduct the investigation without the orders of the magistrate in case of non-cognizable offences. Section 155 subsection 3 provides that when the order is issued by the magistrate for the purpose of conduction of the investigation, then the police officer will have the same powers to investigate the case as in case of cognizable offences, but he will not exercise the power to make the arrest without warrant. Section 155 subsection 4 provides that when the information given to the police officer reveals the commission of a cognizable offence as well as non-cognizable offence, then the whole case shall be treated as a cognizable case and the police officer will have the power to conduct the investigation into cognizable offence as well as non-cognizable offence without the prior permission of the magistrate. Now, the next point for the discussion is magistrate's power to order investigation to the police officer. Normally, it is the power of the police officer to conduct the investigation, but there are certain circumstances in which even a magistrate can order the police officer to conduct the investigation. First one is when the magistrate receives a complaint, then before taking the cognizance on the basis of that complaint, he can order to conduct the investigation under section 156 subsection 3. On receiving a complaint, magistrate is not bound to take the cognizance, and if it appears to the magistrate that before taking cognizance the investigation is required to be done in the matter, then he can order to conduct the investigation. Second situation is when the magistrate takes the cognizance under section 190 subsection 1 clause C, that is upon some other information received and it appears to him that an investigation in the case is required to be done, then he can order to conduct the investigation under section 156 subsection 3. Next one, when the magistrate receives a complaint and after taking cognizance upon the complaint, that is after examining the complainant under section 200, it appears to the magistrate that an investigation is required to be done in the matter, then he can order to conduct the investigation under section 202. Next one, after receiving the information in relation to the cognizable offence, if the police officer decides not to conduct the investigation and reports under section 157, and on the basis of the report it appears to the magistrate that an investigation is required to be done, then under section 159 magistrate has the power to order the police officer to conduct the investigation. Next one, if the final report or the closure report is filed under section 169 by the investigating officer and it appears to the magistrate that a further investigation is required for the purpose of discovery of some more evidences, then he can order to conduct the investigation under section 156 subsection 3. When the investigation report or the charge sheet is submitted by the investigating officer under section 173 and it appears to the magistrate that there are no sufficient grounds in the report submitted for taking cognizance, then he can order to conduct the further investigation under section 156 subsection 3. Now, the next point for the discussion is interrogation by the police officer. While conducting the investigation for the purpose of gathering the information, for the purpose of collection of the facts, collection of the evidences and recording of the statements, various persons need to be interrogated. From section 160 to section 164 of the Code of Criminal Procedure, various provisions have been made in this regard. Section 160 empowers the police officer making the investigation to require the attendance before himself of any person acquainted with the facts and circumstances of the case. The order under section 160 shall be issued by the police officer in writing. However, the heading of this section provides that the police officer's power to require the attendance of any witness, but the main body of this section suggests that any person can be called under section 160. This term any person includes, apart from the witnesses, any victim and the accused also. If the accused has not already been arrested earlier by the police officer, then even the accused person can be ordered to appear in the police station for the purpose of interrogation. The order which is issued under section 160 is mandatory and the non-compliance of the order issued by the police officer can be made punishable under section 174 of the Indian Penal Code. There are certain exceptions to this section, that is a male person below the age of 15 years or above the age of 65 years or a female person of any age or a mentally or physically disabled person cannot be ordered to appear in the police station. These persons shall be interrogated at the place of their residence. In this regard, the proviso to section 157 subsection 1 inserted by the Criminal Procedure Amendment Act is also relevant. This proviso provides that in case of offence of rape, the statements of the rape victim shall be recorded at the place of her residence or at any other place of her choice, and as far as practicable by a woman police officer in the presence of her parents or guardian or the near relative or any social worker. Presence of lawyer during interrogation of the accused. In the case of Nandini Satpathy versus P.L. Dani long back in the year 1978, this right was favoured by the Supreme Court, and recently by the Criminal Procedure Amendment Act, section 41D has also been inserted. It provides the right to the accused to meet his lawyer at the stage of interrogation. A recent case of Senior Intelligence Officer versus Jugal Kishore Samra is also relevant here. In this case, the question before the Supreme Court was that whether a person called for the interrogation is entitled to the presence of his lawyer when he is questioned during the interrogation under the provisions of Customs Act or the Foreign Exchange Regulation Act, and the Supreme Court gave the answer to this question in negative. The next point is the order for the protection of documents. For the purpose of investigation, several documents need to be examined, and under section 91, police officer has the power to order any person for the protection of the documents, and the non-compliance of that order shall be punishable under section 175 of the Indian Penal Code. An accused person can also be ordered to produce any document before the police officer. However, he cannot be compelled to produce any incriminatory document. The next point is examination of witnesses by the police. Section 161 authorizes the police officer to examine any person acquainted with the facts of the case. But the main body of this section suggests that any person can be examined by the police officer under section 161. Any person includes any witness, victim and even the accused. as it was held by the Supreme Court in the case of Ramesh Chandra Mehta versus State of West Bengal, that there is nothing in this section to exclude the examination by the police officer during investigation of a person who subsequently becomes an accused, though his statement shall not be admissible as evidence because of the reason of section 162. Police officer can ask any question from these persons and they shall be bound to give the answer truly, as it is given in section 161 subsection 2. The false information provided to the police officer shall be punishable under section 202 or section 203 of the Indian Penal Code. And if any person refuses to give the answer to the police officer, then he can be convicted under section 179 of the Indian Penal Code. However, section 161 provides certain protections, that is protection to the person to be interrogated, that the question answers to which would have a tendency to expose him to a criminal charge or to a penalty or forfeiture of his property need not to be answered, as it was held by the Supreme Court in the case of Nandini Satpathy versus P.L. Dani, that the person to be interrogated is entitled to keep his mouth shut if the answer sought has a reasonable prospect of exposing him to guilt in some other accusation. The investigating officer should record the statements promptly, and this prompt recording of the statement shall avoid the contradictions and suspicion. The next point for the discussion is evidentiary value of the statements made to the police officer. As section 162 provides that the statements made to the police officer need not to be signed by the maker. These statements are not a substantial piece of statements. These statements are not taken on oath. These statements can be used only for the purpose of section 145 of the Indian Evidence Act. That is, these statements can be used only for the purpose of impeaching the credibility of the witness by establishing a contradiction between his previous statements made at the stage of investigation and the statements made at the stage of trial. However, there are certain exceptions, and in those exceptional circumstances, the statements made before the police officer can be used as a substantial piece of evidence. That is, when the maker of it dies after making the statement and the statement reveals the cause of his death or the circumstances in which his death was caused, then the statements can be used as a substantial piece of evidence under section 32 subsection 1 of the Evidence Act. Another one is when these statements leads to the discovery of certain articles or things, then those statements are admissible as evidence under section 27 of the Evidence Act. In this regard, the case of Dinesh Bora Thakur versus State of West Bengal is also relevant here. In this case, the Supreme Court decided about the evidentiary value of the dog's tracking. In this case, it was said by the Supreme Court that the dog cannot go into the box and give his evidence on oath and consequently submit himself to the cross examination. The dog's human companion must go into the box and report the dog's evidence, and this is clearly a hearsay evidence. The life and liberty of a human being should not be dependent on canine inferences. The possibility of error on the part of dog and its master is also there. The possibility of a misrepresentation or a wrong inference from the behavior of the dog can also not be avoided. So, in this case, it was held by the Supreme Court that the dog's tracking can be used for the purpose of investigation, but these cannot be taken as a substantial piece of evidence for the purpose of determining the guilt of accused at the stage of trial. Next one is no inducement to be offered. Section 163 provides that for the purpose of extracting the answer to the questions made by the police officer, no police officer shall make any inducement or threat or promise to any person to be interrogated. The statements must be made by the person out of his own free will. Now, the next point for the discussion is recording of the confessions and statements by the magistrate. As section 25 of the Indian Evidence Act provides that the confessions made to the police officer are not relevant as an evidence. But section 164 of the Code of Criminal Procedure provides a solution to this problem. Section 164 empowers judicial magistrate or the metropolitan magistrate for the recording of the confession and the statements at the stage of investigation, and that shall be admissible as evidence. Means, if at the stage of investigation it appears to the police officer that one person is willing to make the confession, then he can produce that person before the magistrate and the magistrate can record the confession. Here also it is important to note that the magistrate need not have the jurisdiction over the matter. Any magistrate can record the confession, and after recording the confession, he shall forward the confession to the concerned judicial magistrate. Before recording the confession, the magistrate shall inform the accused that he is not bound to make the confession, and if he makes the confession, then it can be used against him. The magistrate shall also make an endorsement in this regard, that is given in section 164 subsection 4. The statements made to the police officer are also not relevant as an evidence because of the effect of section 162. Statements made to the police officer at the stage of investigation are also not admissible as evidence because of the effect of section 162. But if those statements are recorded by the magistrate under section 164 subsection 5, then those statements can be taken as evidence. It is to be noted that the confession recorded by the magistrate are not substantial piece of evidence. These statements have to be proved by the magistrate who recorded the statement at the stage of trial, and that can be followed by the cross examination of the magistrate also. Now the next point for the discussion is arrest at the stage of investigation. Recently, in the case of Arnesh Kumar versus State of Bihar and another, once again several guidelines were issued by the Supreme Court for the prevention of arbitrary arrest. It was said by the Supreme Court that we believe that no arrest should be made only because the offence is non-bailable and cognizable, and therefore lawful for the police officer to do so. The police officers must be able to justify the reasons thereof. No arrest can be made in a routine manner on a mere allegation of commission of an offence made against a person. It was said by the Supreme Court that before exercising the power to make arrest without warrant, police officer must put before himself some questions, that is, why arrest, is it really required, what purpose it will serve, what object it will achieve. The next point for the discussion is search by the police officer. For the purpose of conduction of the investigation, several places are needed to be searched. Section 93 empowers the police officer to make the search under the warrant, and section 165 empowers the police officer to make the search without warrant. It provides that when for the purpose of investigation the search of a place is required and the delay occasioned in obtaining search warrant will defeat the purpose of search, then police officer can make the search without warrant. However, section 165 empowers the police officer to make the search without warrant for a particular document or thing or for a specified material. This section does not authorize the police officer to make a general search, and this power can be used only in case of cognizable offences. Now the next point for the discussion is procedure when the investigation cannot be completed within the period of 24 hours. As section 57 provides that the arrestee shall be produced within the period of 24 hours from the time of his arrest. If the investigation can be completed within the period of 24 hours, then the police officer can produce the accused before the magistrate along with the charge sheet. But if the investigation cannot be completed within the period of 24 hours and the further detention of the accused is required, then he can produce the accused under section 167 before the nearest judicial magistrate and can demand for the further detention. The police officer at this stage has to satisfy the magistrate why the detention is required beyond the period of 24 hours, and if the magistrate is satisfied, then he can authorize the further detention of the accused maximum for the period of 15 days either in judicial custody or in police custody. But if he authorizes the further detention in police custody, then he shall record the reasons for the same. It is also important to note here that at this stage the accused can be produced before any nearest judicial magistrate whether he is having the jurisdiction over the matter or not. At this stage, magistrate must apply his mind and should not authorize the detention only on the application made by the police officer. As it was held in the case of Ramesh versus State of Bihar, that when the accused is produced before a magistrate, it becomes the court's responsibility and power to order whether he is to be remanded to further custody or granted bail or released altogether. If the investigation cannot be completed even within the period of 15 days, then the accused can be produced before the concerned judicial magistrate having the jurisdiction over the matter, and he can authorize the further detention if he is satisfied that why the further detention is required beyond the period of 15 days. Beyond the period of 15 days, the further detention can be authorized only in judicial custody maximum for the period of 90 days or 60 days. 90 days in case of serious offences, that is the offences which are punishable with the death penalty or with the life imprisonment or with the imprisonment more than 10 years, and in all the other cases maximum for the period of 60 days. In the case of Chaganti Satyanarayana and others versus State of Andhra Pradesh, it was held that this period of 60 days or 90 days shall be calculated from the date of first remand and not from the date of arrest. It is also important to note here that under section 167, the detention of the accused can be authorized at the stage of investigation. Once the magistrate takes the cognizance, then the further detention of the accused can be authorized under section 309, not under section 167. If the investigation cannot be completed even within the period of 60 days or 90 days, then it shall be the right of the accused to be released on bail. Now the next point for the discussion is release of accused when evidences are insufficient. If after completion of the investigation it is found by the police officer that evidences against the accused to prove his guilt at the stage of trial are not sufficient, then he can produce under section 169 a final report or a summary. This is also called a closure report or a khatma chalan. The magistrate may accept this report and may close down the case and release the accused. But the magistrate cannot compel the police officer to file a police report under section 173. It is the discretion of the police officer whether to file the final report or to file the investigation report. The magistrate is not bound to accept the final report. When the final report is produced under section 169 before the magistrate, then magistrate either can accept the final report and may close down the case, or he can order for the further conduction of the investigation under section 156 subsection 3, or he can take the cognizance of the matter also, as it was held in the case of Rakesh Kumar and another versus State of UP in the year 2014, that the magistrate can ignore the conclusions arrived at by the investigating officer and independently apply his mind to the facts emerging from the investigation and take cognizance of the case. When the final report is produced under section 169 by the police officer, then a protest petition, that is also called Narazgi, can be filed by the victim or the informant, and the magistrate can treat this protest petition as a complaint and can take the cognizance on the basis of this protest petition. Now the next point for the discussion is case diary. Section 172 of the code provides for the maintenance of the case diary. It provides that while conducting the investigation, police officer performs various functions such as proceeding to the spot, sketching the map, ascertaining the facts and circumstances, recording the statements on the spot, issuing the orders under section 160, examination of the various persons under section 161. Section 172 provides that all these functions which are performed by the police officer at the stage of investigation are need to be recorded in this case diary. However, the case diary is not a substantial piece of evidence. The police officer can use the case diary for the purpose of refreshing his memory. General diary differs from case diary. General diary is maintained under section 44 of the Police Act. In the general diary, all the events of a police station are recorded, while in the case diary, all the events in relation to a particular case are recorded. These are the following contents of a general diary, that is, all the complaints made and the information given at the police station. Next one, the names of the complainants and the informants, the names of all the persons arrested, the offences alleged to have been committed by them, the arms and weapons forfeited, the names of witnesses examined. Now the next point for the discussion is report of the police officer on completion of investigation. If after completion of the investigation it is found by the police officer that there are sufficient evidences against the accused to prove his guilt at the stage of trial, then he can file under section 173 an investigation report or a police report. This is commonly known as a charge sheet or the challan. These are the following ingredients of a police report which is filed under section 173. That is, the names of the parties, the nature of the information, the names of the persons who appears to be acquainted with the circumstances of the case, whether any offence appears to have been committed, if so by whom, whether the accused has been arrested, and last one, whether he has been released on his executing a bail bond. Police report is submitted under section 173 by the investigating officer, then the magistrate may take cognizance of the matter under section 190 subsection 1 clause B. However, the magistrate is not bound to take the cognizance on the basis of the police report. When the police report is submitted, then either the magistrate can take the cognizance, or if it appears to the magistrate that a further investigation is required to be done, then he can order to conduct the further investigation under section 156 subsection 3, or he can close down the case also. But it was provided in the case of Bhagwant versus Commissioner that if the magistrate decides to close down the case, then he will give an opportunity to the informant or to the victim. Now the next point for the discussion is further investigation. When after submission of the police report under section 173 subsection 2, police officer comes to know about some new facts and it appears to him that a further investigation is required to be made in the matter for the discovery of some new evidences, then under section 173 subsection 8 he is authorized to make a further investigation and he can submit an additional report. This report is called a supplementary report or the supplementary challan. It is important to note here that this is a discretionary power of the police officer and the magistrate cannot order to conduct the investigation under section 173 subsection 8. Before taking cognizance, the magistrate can order to conduct the investigation under section 156 subsection 3. Now the next point for the discussion is inquest report. Section 174 provides for the inquest report. It provides that when the police officer receives an information that a person has committed suicide or has been killed by another person or by animal or by machinery or by an accident or has died under circumstances raising a reasonable suspicion that an offence has been committed against him, then he can give that information to the nearest executive magistrate and can proceed to the spot for the purpose of conduction of the investigation. The object of the investigation, which is conducted under section 174, is to ascertain the apparent cause of the death. The object is not to conduct the detailed investigation for the purpose of collection of the evidences against the accused and for the purpose of determining the guilt of the accused. This report, which is submitted under section 174, is also not a substantial piece of evidence.